Why we're surrounded by...
Hi, I'm Damien Baxter on the Creators Unlocked podcast with LiveLink. Today I'm joined by Kat Thorne. Nice to meet you.
Hello, lovely to be here.
You're an international speaker and you're also teaching businesses about positive habits.
I am, yes.
Specifically in the morning, I think, is it?
Yes, I do love the morning, but it's not just the morning, it's also the evening and what we get up to during the day.
Oh, cool. And how's that going?
Wow, it's going better than I could have imagined, actually. Yeah, I'm loving it and I just want to do more.
So when did you start the road for this sort of self-employed journey?
So I've been working for myself just over a year, but I started off, I call it a bit like messing around. I didn't really know what I was doing. I thought I should target people, I guess, a bit like myself, so former executives, directors, people who were probably had a pretty bad work-life balance, people who were really stressed. And I don't really know why it didn't work in the beginning. Probably a lot of reasons, but I spent about 6 months targeting the wrong thing to the wrong people. And in March of this year, I got a call from my old boss in Norway. And that moment, he asked me to present to a group of educational technology leaders. And it was at that moment I realized these are my people. I should be working with teams and organizations, not trying to target people individually.
So you were a director and CEO.
Mm-hmm.
What industry was that in?
Ed tech.
Oh, was it? That must have been, I mean, how hard did you have to work to get to that position? And
well, I've worked really hard in my career, so yeah. I think it paid off. But I actually got headhunted to be the CEO of the organisation I was working for.
Okay.
But I started life off as a teacher many, many years ago.
What did you teach?
I taught maths and English to speakers of other languages. I was a college teacher, so kind of further education. But yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother podcast episode, I think, in itself. Like that whole
Hey, I'm
journey.
digging into everything in this podcast. Don't you worry about that.
I mean, I think that's quite interesting where it all started because so I'm from Somerset originally, but I did my PGCE in Portsmouth. And I often admit this, and I'm really happy to share this. There's only one reason I became a teacher when I left uni, and that was because the government was offering a golden hello, £3,000 if you became a teacher.
Oh, really?
So I got £3,000. I was able to buy a car, and I became a teacher. But I did love the idea of, helping people and sharing knowledge. But boy, teaching, nothing can prepare you for teaching. I felt like I was dropped from a very big height, very hard on a concrete floor when I started teaching.
For what reason?
Well, I just felt like as a brand new teacher, nothing really prepared me for what I faced when I went into that role. And I felt like as a new teacher, I drew a bit of the short straw. I got the really, really tough classes. So it all started bearing in mind I was teaching young people, young boys and girls young people, I should say, who'd been perhaps, they hadn't kind of got on very well at school for whatever reason, they hadn't got their qualifications. And there they were in my class trying to get English and maths so they could go on into some kind of vocational route. And I'll never forget, I was with this group of hairdressers. It was one of my first lessons. And I was like so ready to just impart my maths knowledge. Not that I was even that good at maths, but I was teaching them fractions and this group of hairdressers, and I said to them, look, girls, this is, it was a group of all female hairdressers. And I was like, this is why we need to do fractions. We need to know how much bleach we're going to put in someone's hair and blah, blah, blah. And anyway, this one girl went, Miss, why are we learning this? Why do we have to learn this? And I was like, well, because, if you're going to eventually dye someone's hair, you probably need to know how much of this, what percentage to put in. And she said, nah, miss, we're just going to get pregnant and get a house.
What?
Yeah. And I was like, welcome to Portsmouth. I mean, I love Portsmouth. I've been sort of moved away and moved back now. And I've been there 6 years and it is like my home. I love it so much. Portsmouth, it has had a bad reputation in the past. But I think it's one of the most incredible cities in the UK. But for me, that belief and that comment that she shared with me that day, and that is, you know, probably 18 years ago now, that has stuck with me. And it's one of my kind of big drivers for the business I'm building right now, because ultimately those are the kind of people I really want to help, the people that have been brought up with such strong beliefs that are actually shaping their lives.
Where does that belief come from?
They get pregnant, get a house.
Yeah, why do they think like that?
I think, well, I said this to someone else the other day and they were like, well, it's true. And I think there is an element of truth in our society here in the UK that we support people who are in vulnerable positions, like young women who don't have any other sort of financial stability. But I also think that it comes from role modeling. It comes from beliefs that they've collected from childhoods, maybe their own parents, other people that are involved in their lives. And honestly, I can't tell you how much of a shock it was to hear that coming from, I've got a really strong role model in my father, and coming from, you know, almost being frightened of ever getting pregnant. It might explain why I'm 40 now and like trying to start my own family. But I certainly grew up with this belief that actually, you know, it was all about working hard and, you know, babies and marriage and partners and all that stuff can wait till later. So to hear that from a 16-year-old, you know, and a group, not just one voice, but collective voices, that was their plan for life, was a big eye opener. It's
quite interesting as well. I think we're in quite a similar age range, you and I. And growing up, it was always like, you know, you go to school, you go to college, you go to university, you get a job, you have a family, you buy a house, and then that's it. You retire and you're done. Whereas now, it's a lot different to that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's not as clear cut as this is what you do, and when you've done that, you now do this, and when you've done that, you now do that. But I do remember there was a lot of people that said, do you know what, I'm just going to skip the education part, and I'm going to go straight to the family marriage at 16, 18. And I think it was probably quite a difficult time for a lot of people, because I've had a child, and
congratulations.
Thank you. But, you know, I'm so glad I didn't have a child at 16, 18, because I had such amazing experiences traveling and learning and educating myself that I possibly wouldn't have ever had those opportunities had I had a child so young.
Yeah. But to me, I mean, one of my best friends was heavily pregnant when we were sitting our exams, and she now has 2 daughters, you know, and her eldest daughter is, you know, university, and she's really an incredible individual. And you wouldn't have thought that looking back to when we were at school, and she's got these like denim dungarees and this massive belly. And some of us, you know, we're still virgins at the time. And there's our friend having her first child. But I think to me, it's not that that's a bad choice. It's just what I find fascinating is that is a deep rooted belief. And so my work that I'm doing now with organizations, and hopefully later on with young people, is all about challenging those beliefs. And for me, because beliefs create the habits that we have, and our habits are shaping our lives. So if we can challenge our own beliefs, then we can change our habits, which means we can have completely different lives than the ones that other people or we sort of have in mind for ourselves.
Better lives?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think we only access like a tiny percentage of our ultimate potential. And we are, and it's quite hard sometimes, because I think all of this comes down to personal responsibility, and it's hard for us to admit that we are sometimes sabotaging our own success or sabotaging our own energy. You know, a lot of teams that I work with will explain, you know, that they're really tired, or they're really stressed, or they're really exhausted. You know, in 2016, I nearly gave myself a heart attack, and I didn't genuinely. Yeah, I sort of destroyed my entire life in 2016, and I did that through the creation of a series of really unhealthy habits.
Like what?
Like my phone, it being like, you know, having a very strong relationship with my phone, that it was just on 24/7. and being so wired to that, you know, going to sleep with it. It'd be the first thing I'd look at within a nanosecond of opening my eyes, using coffee to wake up, alcohol to kind of bring things down. Always, you know, never actually investing in myself. Never, you know, it's a bit like when we go and sort of expect the car to start without any fuel in the tank. Yeah. I think every single day as human beings, we are expecting to operate on this obscene level. And I mean just a normal day, let alone a day where you've got something really serious you've got to perform in. And we go into every single day without the mental, the physical readiness. And I think we do that from children. So do you remember when you're a child, and whether you grew up with your parents or guardians or you're in care, it's pretty much the same set of habits and routines. You wake up, you get dressed, you kind of wrestle, or maybe you wrestle the duvet, your parents try to pull it off you. You know, your alarm goes off, you get dressed, maybe you have breakfast, you go to school. And like we're almost like robots, we transition when we're adults and we do the same things. And to me in 2016 was the biggest wake-up call of my life when I went to the doctor, because, yeah, my whole life exploded. And he said to me, I'm surprised you haven't given yourself a heart attack.
So can I just talk about, it sounds very negative, but I want to just talk about the negative things first, because what I think would be a good idea just for the purpose of this conversation would be to, I think a lot of people listening to this will be able to resonate with a lot of those negative things that we're all in the habit of doing at the moment.
Yeah.
I certainly probably can. And I'd love to hear about the things that we can do to sort of flip that upside down and turn it into a positive. So you mentioned about the first thing you do when you wake up was check your phone. Was there any other identifiers that were having this burden on your life pre-2016 that were negative habits?
Loads. I mean, there were so many. Even just a lot of thoughts, I suppose. So I think I'm a massive overthinker and a massive people pleaser, but it's something I've been working quite hard on over the last few years. So I would, it was, I think, more than just the habit of the phone. It was what I was doing with the phone, the content I was consuming.
Okay.
So, for example, having the habit of checking my emails first thing. Like I hadn't even allowed myself to wake up. And I was straight there in bed looking at the screen, getting ready for the day by stressing myself out about what I had to do. Things like making false promises to myself. So I knew things like, a lot of people, we're intelligent. We know that certain things are good for us. We know reading's good for us. We know exercise is good for our mental and physical performance. But yet we say to ourselves, I'll go to the gym at the end of the day. I'll go for a run. I'll go for a walk. And we never do. And so I think it was a series of habits like that. Also not knowing where boundaries are. So I'd be working all the time. And when I say working all the time, I mean, my brain was always on. Even at my best friend's wedding, on a Saturday, I was in the toilets working.
On doing the emails and things like that. I think a lot of people can probably resonate with that. I know I certainly can. Did you find that you were going to bed stressed?
Yeah.
And lying in bed overthinking things?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just all the time.
Yeah. So I never slept well. I used to wake up like 3-4 times in the night, and then I was a terrible snoozer, at least 3, 4, 5 times every single morning. And I'd leave it. And this is why I love I love skepticism. I love teams when they bring all of their skepticism to my sessions or my talks, because I was, I guess I was in a lot of these people's position pre-2016. I thought meditation was the biggest load of BS going. I thought this was green juice, yoga. It's not for me. I'm a serious businesswoman. I've got a career to get on with. I haven't got time to sit still. And the irony is that I think a lot of us think we haven't got time for these things, but what's the cost? What's the price we're ultimately going to pay for it? And I've got this brilliant graphic that I had designed with a brilliant designer. I'll just give her a shout out. She's got a company called Quoted Visually, Hannah Wilson, and she's just brilliant. I've worked with her on quite a few designs. And it's like 2 people standing on some blocks, and the top line says success. They're both reaching success. One is kind of just work, and the other one is working smarter, but with positive habits. So I guess the message is that one is sustainable and one's unsustainable. And I used to think I was untouchable. I used to think if I worked 24/7 that I would achieve success. And all I did was destroy every single part of my life and had to put it back together like a jigsaw puzzle.
How are you defining success? Or better question, how were you defining success back then? And has that changed today?
I think success, like we were talking about earlier, like I grew up with my dad. I lost my mum when I was 4 years old. So I think from the age of 4, I figured out really, really quickly that life can be snatched away from you, you know, in a split second. So I think I've always wanted to aim higher and, you know, just know that you don't know when today, you know, when your last day is coming or when your time's up, I guess. And I think I read something the other day. It said we gather so many of our beliefs and our behaviors by the age of 7. And I definitely learned from my dad and a lot of those early childhood experiences that success is having a good career, having a stable, partner, marriage, having your own house. My dad was a builder, so having your own house was like this number one goal. Yeah. Having plenty of money, having a family, like literally a checkbox. And I remember when I met my ex-partner that I literally had this checklist in my head. And I remember the first conversation talking to him when I first met him, and I was like, check, check, check.
Really?
I remember going down like as if I had it kind of on my hand, and he ticked all the boxes. But that's the thing, I think, now, because I feel like when we're children, we wake up and we go into this autopilot mode. We're taught to just go into the day doing the basic things, you know, getting dressed, have a shower, have your breakfast, and we carry on that when we're adults. And this is what I talk about a lot in my work now, is that's what leads to devastating consequences. That is what is contributing to stress, overwhelm, divorce, infidelity, illness, and a lot worse. And I've experienced, you know, pretty much all of those.
Oh, wow. So you went to the doctors and you spoke about how did that conversation go? Did you say I'm stressed, or did you say were you having pains in your heart? Like what does that look like?
I think sometimes we wait for, well, no, I don't say sometimes. We wait for major life things to happen to us before we make changes. So I got married, even though I knew something was wrong, but because I was running on autopilot and because I was referring back to the beliefs and the checklist, I thought, oh no, this is fine. I just kept ignoring. I suppose what I now have learned is my intuition and, you know, my true self. And I was just following that belief. Oh, but this is what it should look like. This is what I should be doing. This is what people do. This is what makes you happy. So I was married for just a few weeks, and I think it was the wedding itself that made me realize I thought I had everything. And in my sessions, the first thing I show people is a happiness ladder. And I ask people, how happy are you? And I ask them to vote on a ladder from 1 to 10. And if I was to sit here with you with that ladder back in 2016, I would have said I was a 10. I had everything. I had the fancy career. I was traveling around the world, working in tech. I loved my job. I was about to get married. I had bought my own home. I had a great family, great friends. I thought I was healthy, you know, but I was so far away from happiness and success. It was unbelievable. And I think I talk about these kind of big pillars in our life, like our careers, our finances, our health, our mental, physical health, and our relationships and everything. And if you imagine those as 4 balloons, I popped every single one. So I lost my relationship. I was married just for a few weeks. I lost my career. I couldn't function. I couldn't work. So I went to the doctors because I just said, I just literally just feel like I can't go on. I just destroyed. Yeah. I think people call it a breakdown. I call it a life explosion. I wasn't formally diagnosed with anything, but as I kind of, in the middle of all this, I got headhunted, going back to your earlier question, to become the CEO of an incredible organization. But what I realized when I took that job was that all these habits were still there. And this organization brought me in as a bit of a last chance saloon, because this organization was really struggling and they kind of had one last shot to turn it around. And I remember in those first couple of years, the meetings I used to go to with the board, and they used to say, Kat, it's not going to work. We're going to have to close this organization down. We're going to have to close this organization down. And I remember feeling so deflated. Anyway, a funny story happened, and this is kind of how the Morning Game Changer all started. So I met a new partner who I'm still with today, and very happy. And he started waking me up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
5 a.m. to go to work?
Yeah. So he got a new job. And bearing in mind, I was the kind of girl who, 7:30, 7:45, I was a kind of 15-minute window before I had to be anywhere, on a bus, a train, a plane, a Zoom call, whatever it was. And yeah, started waking up at 5 a.m. And on the first day, I remember kind of being, a little bit annoyed, but supportive girlfriend. Okay, you've got a new job. I'll try not to be too annoyed about this. Tuesday, same thing happened. I'm a light sleeper. There was no way I was going back to sleep again. And then on Wednesday, I got really annoyed, and I thought, you know what? What am I going to do with this extra time? Because I'm never going to go back to sleep. I'm just going to be woken up every single morning at 5 o'clock. And what do you think my first thought was when I started waking up at 5 o'clock? What could I do with these extra 2.5 hours in the morning?
Coffee.
That's a long coffee. My first thought was I can do so much more work.
Oh, of course.
That was my first thought. I can get ahead. This is the way that I'm going to turn this organization around. If I got 2 hours more done a day, that's like 10 to 15 hours a week.
So that's what you did?
No, that's not what I did.
So hang on, whoa.
That was the thought. No, that was the thought.
Okay, so you've gone from CEO, director, work obsessed, don't really care about your health, although you probably thought you did, to suddenly going to a complete transformation. We've not even talked about going self-employed yet. I'm just talking about in your attitude and in your mindset. Yeah. What happened? When did that happen, and how did it happen?
So the thing that's been driving my whole life and my career was that the harder you work, the more hours you do, the more successful you'll be. Mm-hmm. That's the big belief, and that's the one I'm challenging people on now. Because although I think you can be very successful with that mindset, you don't have to do a morning routine, you don't have to have any habits, positive ones anyway. You can be successful. My message is, or my experience is, it's not sustainable. You'll only get away with it for a certain period of time before it catches up with you. And it'll catch up with you in your health, your relationships, and every area of your life. So that morning, that Wednesday morning, 5 o'clock, when I had that thought to myself, I could do more work.
Yeah.
Another thought came into my mind at the same time. And the other thought was, but hang on, you did that before. And remember how that ended up? When you kind of destroyed every area of your life, that's going to happen again.
Hey, it's Mel at LiveLink here. We're making it possible for creators and experts to teach anything online. It is the easiest way to monetize your audience. We'll even sort out your video editing and email marketing for you, leaving you to do what you do best, creating. LiveLink.vip, where creators and experts teach.
And at this moment, I looked over to my bedside table and I saw a book that had been sitting there for ages called The Miracle Morning.
Right.
And it was a book that my brother bought me ages ago. He's quite into all this kind of self-development stuff. And, even self-development, I used to think it should be a business skill. So if I ever invested in myself, it was learning something about business, about sales or marketing, or I never thought about investing in my own sort of energy or knowledge in that way. And in fact, I used to think books were a waste of time unless they were a specific book for my career.
Teaching a very specific skill.
Yeah. So this book was on the table and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to pick it up and read a few pages and let's see what happens. Didn't really have any expectations at that moment. And after about 10 minutes, I could feel something shift in myself. There was an energy, an excitement about the content I was reading, but also for the first morning in what felt like my whole life, I didn't feel stressed. I didn't feel like I've got to get to work, like the heart racing. I just felt like, wow, this is a different feeling to feel in the morning before I go into that work day.
And you had that realization there and then?
Yeah. It was only very slight and very small.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'd like more of this. So it just started from there, one habit at a time. So the reading came, and then I thought, exercise, it's something I've got to just try. And I think exercise, if I could do one thing, I'd love to remove exercise from the dictionary and rename it movement. Because I think exercise for a lot of people feels like this negative connotation. Like you've got to go to an intimidating gym for an hour and a half a day, and who's got time for that? In fact, one guy commented on my LinkedIn post saying, who's got time for a morning routine? It's completely unrealistic. So a big part of what I'm trying to do with teams and organizations across the globe is reshape the way we view some of these things, habits, morning routines. It's about finding a few minutes of your morning. I call it the yellow box. So it's the bit between when you open your eyes and you start your work day, whatever your work day looks like. It might be looking after your children, it might be running your own business, it might be going to your job. That yellow box for me is literally the game changer, the life changer. Because when I changed what I did in my yellow box, I turned that organization around. I became a really good CEO.
Good in the respect that you were making more money, or good in the fact that the people you were managing had a lot more respect for you?
In every way. I mean, the organization went from having no future to having a future. It went from not raising money to raising money.
All because you picked up that book one morning and got a boyfriend that woke up at 5 a.m.
Yeah, so there you go. All you do is get a boyfriend that wakes up early.
But no, I mean, that was the trigger, wasn't
yeah.
it? So, yeah, and that literally changed your work. Like, is that because you could see more clearly the direction that the business needed to go in, and you had that that cloud just taken out of your mind?
Yeah, and because I allowed myself the time in the morning to get ready for the day. So I started doing things like planning my day, whereas before I'd run straight into my emails. A second after opening your eyes, straight in your emails. You haven't even woken up yet. You haven't refueled the tank, as it were. And I think so many of us are guilty of doing that in the morning, at night, and sometimes all through the day. I mean, for example, I've stopped having email open now. It just, to me, it's stealing my time and my attention.
Sorry, email open, what do you mean?
Yeah, so when you've got your email open when you're working.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So I think a lot of us are guilty for doing that.
You just dedicate time to your email and then it's done.
Yeah, I don't have it open because otherwise I'll be working on something really important.
Good idea.
My focus goes somewhere else. And I hear these stories from teams I work with on a daily basis that they can be really in the moment, whether they're focusing on something at work or for example, there was a woman who told me recently, so it was a Sunday, she's in the park, she's pushing a child. You can just imagine, can't you? Especially now you've got a young son, it's sunny, it's Sunday, you kind of switched off from work and then you just hear that ding and you get it out your back pocket. And suddenly you've got one hand on the swing now and you're reading an email.
Yeah.
And she said to her that she was actually a teacher, and she said it was something, I don't know what the content of the email was, but she said it completely ruined her Sunday and she had a terrible night's sleep. And of course, the impact of that is that she's completely disconnected now to her child, and she has ruined her Sunday.
Yeah.
Because she chose to look at that email in that moment. And so we have big debates with the companies I work with about email etiquette. Some companies want to stop emails out of hours and things like that. And I think that's not realistic in this 24/7 digitally connected world we're living in. I think we should all be looking at our own habits and our own boundaries.
So I'm going to speak about my own personal experience now.
Yes, I'd love to
I'm going to make it about me. And I know this is all about you. I cannot have a notification on my phone. I have to clear it. I have to look at it. I have to get rid of it. What advice would you give to anybody else out there because it's very easy for us to sit there and say, do you know what? Just check your emails from 9 till 10 and then don't look at them again till the next day. But in reality, it's not that easy.
It's not that easy, but it's about discipline, isn't it? It's, to me, it's a bit like, now I do weight training in the gym and I love it. And for me, habits are like weight training. You can't lift very heavy in the beginning, but over time you train your muscles and you can lift more and more. And if you stop lifting for a period of time, you become weaker, you know, and you have to go back. And it's like, for me, habits are something you've got to practice consistently. That's where you will get the results that you're looking for. And I've seen all sorts of interesting initiatives around phones. So like having a home for your phone. So literally, it kind of, I think, you know, they follow us everywhere, don't they?
They do.
But I think especially at home and the place where you're working, you have to give it a home, because otherwise it just interrupts every aspect of your life. And I think as somebody who's destroyed her own relationship and friendships and things through my own unhealthy habits, I think I'm so passionate now about helping people put positive habits in place so they don't experience, you know, infidelity and divorce and, you know, stress and overwhelm and breakdowns and things. Because a lot of this is just common sense. A lot of this is very simple, small things we can be doing ourselves. It's not rocket science. As somebody said to me the other day, Kat, I can't believe you're building a business and getting paid for telling people common sense.
No, but sometimes we need to hear it.
I know. I like, we're human beings. We know what's good for us. We don't do it though.
Yeah. Well, okay then. So CEO, director, bad habits. You then made that transition to better habits.
Yeah.
You then quit as a CEO / director and you went self-employed.
Yeah. So there was quite a,
What? Go for it.
There's quite a big period. I think there was, 2 years of this before I decided to move on. And it was with a really heavy heart. I think I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit in me.
It's a very corporate term, heavy heart.
Was it?
I love
Is
that.
it?
You still got it.
It was. Yeah, I think I'll always, I don't know. I think it was a big part of me, that identity, having that job title.
Like an egotistical thing.
I think like I've achieved something in my life.
So almost like personal gratification.
I think so.
Okay.
I think I probably was quite superficial, and I'm on cat life number 2, I call it, but cat life number 1 I think was quite superficial and sort of fighting her way for sort of her place in the world and recognition, and I think because I grew up in a tiny little village and lots of my friends stayed in the village, stayed sort of in the local area, and I felt like the odd one out, the one who wanted to go and live in Germany and go to university and then kind of travel around the world. And so sometimes my friends would make fun of me in a nice way, but say, you're this high flying, whatever, now have you even got time to see us, sort of thing. But it was, I think, it was really difficult to leave, and I'll tell you why. The money was hard. I had bought a house. When you kind of commit yourself financially to a salary and you're used to getting that money every month, I had no idea until I was trying to leave it what a comfort blanket that is.
How much you actually needed. Because I would imagine, as a CEO and director, you're earning money that probably most people listening to this podcast, including, lots of people would never even dream of earning as an annual salary.
Yeah.
You go to the bank manager and you say, hey, I need a mortgage. And they say, shows your last 3 months. Yeah. It's very different when you go self-employed.
It is. And I don't think anyone really prepares you for that. And, but I don't know. I think the more I was reading, the more habits I had, the more I was journaling, the more sort of I call it positive brain food. The more stuff I was feeding my brain made me feel like I could do anything. And honestly, my morning routine now is like a bulletproof coat.
So talk me through that then. What does that look like now? What is the successful morning routine that's worked for Kat Thorne?
So my alarm goes off every morning at 5 a.m. I don't advocate getting up at 5. I know there's this big thing about being part of 5 a.m. club. But to me, that's just the time that works for me. I'm more about what you do in the morning rather than what time you wake up. Yeah. So 5 a.m., I get up, always drink water as soon as I wake up now. Coffee comes much, much later. And there are 3 things that I do every single morning without fail. One is move my body. Sometimes that's just like a little walk with the dog. Sometimes it's like a heavy weightlifting session at the gym with a personal trainer. Sometimes it's a swim. Sometimes it's a run. Whatever it is, I've got to get my body moving very quickly in the morning. The second thing is feeding my brain something positive. So it used to be feeding it with stress, feeding it with deadlines, emails, messages. And now I fuel it with something like a podcast, or I quite like those American shouty motivational videos on YouTube.
So what do you do?
Like
do you just,
Marmite,
do you just sit in your chair, like your rocking chair, and listen to a podcast? Like, I'm just picturing you in the corner of your front room.
Well, it depends on the day. And this is the thing about morning routines. They've got to be really flexible. So if I'm going, like, say, to London for the day, I'm usually on the train at like 6. So it might be something I listen to as I'm walking to the station.
Yeah.
Or, it'll be just something I put on at home. It depends. It's got to be really flexible. And the third thing I do every single day without fail is make a plan.
Yeah.
I think so many of us, we rush straight into the day and we don't really know what our plan is for the day. And I talk a lot about this concept of eating your frog, which is doing the most important task you've got to get done first.
Yeah.
Because I feel like even when you're hired by someone and you're in like a corporate role, yes, there's going to be demands on you. But you also have your own priorities and your own work that you need to get done. But I used to feel so often that would come about a realization about 4:00 when all my kind of brain power was gone. And I'd be like, oh my God, I haven't even done that report or haven't finished sending that email. And there's a lot of research linked to this very simple, it's also called the Pomodoro technique, I think. Basically, you identify what your most important task is of the day. Then you set a timer, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, no other notifications, no email or anything, and just get it done. Yeah. And what it does is it creates that like positivity and that momentum first thing in the morning, and that kind of channels and sort of sets the tone for the day.
Yeah. How do you now deal with things that don't go to plan, or if you're off routine in the morning now?
Do you know what? I've got so much resilience and so much power and energy that it's fine. I just manage it. Yeah. And I think that's why I'm starting to get contacted more and more by organizations, is because people are just falling over so easily at the moment because they don't fuel themselves. Yeah. So, for me, positive habits in the morning are, like I said before, they're the key, I think, to having the happiest, healthiest and highest performing life you can have.
I had Amelia Sordell on the podcast last week, and she's a big advocate of this idea of hustle culture. What do you think about that? It's very much around this idea of, to get what you want or to get where you want to be and to be successful, you need to work bloody hard.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of hers, and I agree with her. I think, like, I haven't got where I am even now today. I work really hard. I do a lot of hours. I have to really watch myself, that I make sure I look after myself. But for me, that morning routine allows the success to come in a sustainable way. So, obviously sometimes there are still those thoughts that, if I spend an hour at the gym, that's an hour that I'm not spending on my business, not getting clients, not helping my clients get their results and so on. But the lesson that I have learned, and this is my big message, is that you cannot help yourself or other people if you are not mentally and physically ready, energized, fueled. So I think my results are always going to be better now because I invest that time. And like I said to you earlier, kind of off camera, that morning routine, it can be just a few minutes. It's just that break between opening your eyes and going straight into the day. So yes, I think you need to work hard. This, just because you've got a morning routine doesn't suddenly mean you can float around on a lilo with a margarita all day either.
That would be nice.
It would be nice.
Yeah.
So she's right, but I think it's about sustainable. Because I think lots of people are feeling really overwhelmed right now. I mean, I actually think we are in the midst of another global pandemic.
We all struggled in the global pandemic. We all had to make alterations to our life that we just weren't used to. Yeah. Me included, by the way. Yeah. It was a big shock to me. So I think these sort of small positive actions that we do in the morning I wish I'd have listened to this podcast back maybe 2 years ago when the global
Yeah.
pandemic hit, because it would have helped a lot of people, including me. So I'm in total agreement. One thing I would say, without having to bring this back to money, are you earning now as much as you earn as a CEO or director doing what you're doing?
Not yet.
Do you envisage yourself earning as much?
Yes.
You do?
I'm going to completely smash my old salary, for sure.
Good.
And of course, I'd be lying if I said financial incentive wasn't part of this. I want to achieve a level of financial freedom that I think is very difficult to achieve when you're in a full-time employed position. But it's far bigger than money. I'm driven by my own experiences. I like to think of myself as like a lived experience speaker, and I suppose coach and trainer and teacher. For me, it's about I wouldn't wish what happened to me on my worst enemy, and I really want to help people see that it's these tiny little changes they can make that are going to make a massive difference to them and the people in their lives.
So could anybody make that change, or do you feel like you're in a very privileged position? I say privileged, you're in a comfortable position because of the income you had previous to going self-employed. Has that allowed you to be able to take that step back and really look at I guess mental health and mental well-being as a priority? Because a lot of people don't have that privilege. They have to earn money, otherwise they're in a lot of trouble.
To me, this is not linked to money. And actually, I had to go into debt to start my business.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I'm working on that now. But actually, it's going from a good salary to just expecting clients and the money to come, and not realizing actually how long it takes for people to pay you when you're self-employed. It's been a massive learning curve for me. But I actually think that whatever you're doing, whatever role, whatever income, you can tap into your potential and, experience life in a different way and decide what your life looks like and what success looks like by these small habit changes. Where I see some resistance, I think it's just because people aren't open to it. And to be honest, I get that, because sometimes it seems like, and sometimes people laugh at me, like, what's a glass of water going to do? It's not going to change my life, is it? And it's not that one glass of water on that one day, of course, that's going to change your life. But if you think about it, we are the sum of our habits. Our lives are totally shaped by what we do every day. If you don't sleep very well, have a look at what you do before you go to bed.
Yeah.
If you don't feel very good in yourself, have a look what you put into your body. Have a look how much you're moving your body, and you'll be able to see a lot of correlation. And so whilst I don't think our total experience of happiness is down to our habits, those daily choices that we're making day on day, week on week, month on month, year on year, they are massively contributing to our overall experience of happiness.
Yeah. Inspirational words.
So what are you inspired to make a change to your morning routine after this?
Everything you just said, I'm just thinking in my head, I do that. Oh yeah, I do that as well. Like the first thing I don't, the light, when I wake up in the morning, the light on my phone, it hurts my eyes trying to read my email.
Oh no.
I do. You're going to hate me. But you know what? The biggest thing that you've said, I think, for me today is I'm going to find a home for my phone when I get home. Home for my phone.
I know, it's hard. It's funny to say, isn't it?
That is definitely going to happen, because I'll hold my hands up right now. My phone is part of my body.
Yeah.
It's one of my limbs.
And it is for most people. So, you're a human being. So you're with 99.9% of the population when you say that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. One more question from me then, before I let you go. What advice would you give? So you've given a lot of advice here about how we can make positive changes to our morning routine and our lives in general. What would be fundamentally the most important change that you would advise anybody looking to make a positive change to do right away? What is something that we can all do quite quickly and easily that doesn't take away too much from?
There are so many Like even just simple as going to bed and waking up at the same time every day sounds really basic.
Yeah.
But it's life changing. But I think the biggest one is don't have your phone in your bedroom until you've got those boundaries in place.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. So I had an employee at one of my sessions the other day, and he said, "Kat, I'm really tired when I wake up." And I know that feeling. It's horrible to wake up and feel tired. And he said, it's because I'm like doom scrolling, sometimes we call it. He said, I'm scrolling really late at night and I know it's affecting my sleep. And I said to him, okay, let's swap. The best way to get rid of a habit that's negatively impacting you, swap it for another habit. So I said, what could you be doing instead of that might kind of get you ready for sleep? And he said, oh, I'm going to read, Or like all of us, we've got these dusty books next to us that we never pick up.
Yeah.
So he swapped it for reading. And then I had a follow-up session with his team. And I said, how did you get on? He was like, brilliant. I've started a reading habit and I'm loving this book and it's definitely helping me with everything. And I said, well, that's great. And he said, yeah, but one problem. And I said, what's the problem? He said, I'm looking at the phone after. So he was still doing that same habit. He just kind of inserted the reading. And I said to him, that's because it's visibly triggering you because you can see it and you're going to pick it up. So he put it out of the room. He gave it a home and, now it's reading and then sleep for him.
Yeah.
And I think that as human beings, like we are so used to having our phones so close to us that whilst you're developing the boundaries with your phone and whilst you're okay with not looking at your phone last thing at night, first thing in the morning, get it out of the bedroom.
I'm going to tell you something honestly now. I'm going to struggle to not look at my work emails immediately after this podcast or within an hour of doing this podcast with you. And I wish I could, but there's no way I'm not going to check my work emails.
We need to work together then.
We do need to work together. I might give you a call. Yeah.
You've got my number now. But I know it's not easy. But honestly, when you can get yourself to that new level of being in control of all of these things step by step, you will reach a new level of performance and your relationships will improve and everything will kind of flourish.
Yeah. Because
it's now you are in control of that, how you access that and when you access it.
No, I completely agree. Truly inspirational words. You've come a long way from CEO, director, stressed, unhealthy to suddenly, to where you are today. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And I am definitely going to be contacting you about some positive habits, certainly in the morning.
Stuff. Look forward to working with you. Thanks for having me on today.
No worries. Thanks, Kat.
Okay.